Katherine is, along with Mitch Pearlstein, the author of Close to Home, a collection of columns on a wide variety of public policy issues. The center has published several of her monographs on education, and she is a graduate of the University of Notre Dame, and she also holds a master's degree from Yale University and a JD from the University of Minnesota. So without any further ado, go ahead.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. And do I need a microphone? I mean, should I speak more loudly?
Stand up would help.
Well,
Do people in the back have trouble hearing mine?
okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. I will project. This was a real inspiration to me. I'm from the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. We are just behind you with Plan Bay Area. We have Thrive MSP 2040. And I understand from someone who is from Chattanooga that their plan is Thrive 2055. So they go us even one better. But Thrive is the product of our unelected, unaccountable Metropolitan Council. This council was founded 40 years ago for a very straightforward purpose, and that was to essentially coordinate infrastructure to make sure that roads and sewers met up. And of course, today, following decades of mission creep, the council views its mission as grandiose social engineering, and its intent on transforming our region to reflect the perfect society of the kind of government planners that Peter was talking about. It's become so powerful today that it is neutering the effectiveness and the power of our local elected officials. It is dictating to and often overruling them. And its Thrive plan, development framework for the next 25, 30 years, is currently being rolled out. It goes well beyond what I think most of us here think of as the traditional smart growth type goals, that is housing densification and transit-oriented development. We are being told now that this plan is going to solve larger problems such as income inequality, such as the racial learning gap in our schools, and of course the problem of climate change. Now, Center of the American Experiment, where I am a senior fellow, is doing what we can to lead the charge against this plan. It's not because I, who am the point person, know anything about this or did at least 2 years ago, but because absolutely nobody else is doing anything about it. And I have to say here, Peter, I have 4 siblings, all very highly educated in the Bay Area. None of them have heard of Plan Bay Area. That's the kind of problem that we are facing as well in the Twin Cities. And I want to tell all of you that the reason that we are able to do what we are doing in the Twin Cities is this wonderful organization. I came just by happenstance last year to this conference, and here I gained the resources, I gained the information, and most importantly, I gained the personal connections to begin to fight this plan. So before I describe how we are doing this, I'll tell you just a bit about the Met Council and about the plan. Now, over the years, the Minnesota legislature has bestowed many powers on our unelected, unaccountable Metropolitan Council and has done it through a patchwork of laws and amendments. So the council is regional planning authority. It's the planner, owner, and operator of our wastewater and transit systems. It has the power to levy taxes. It's a housing redevelopment authority, and it serves as our MPO. So it distributes millions in federal funds and also lots and lots of money in state and regional funds for a host of purposes to the 186 municipalities in our 7-county area. And of course, the council today is using its dual role as a planning czar and a funding gatekeeper to pick winners and losers among these municipalities and to impose its own priorities on communities as a condition for their receipt of funds and planning approval, without which they cannot develop. Now, the situation reached a crisis proportion starting in 2011 with the 2010 election of Governor Mark Dayton, who is a progressive of the First Order and, of course, independently wealthy. His family founded Dayton Corporation and Target stores. Now, Dayton's council has framed its 30-year framework, Thrive, not in terms that are consistent with its statutory authority, or the council's statutory authority, over sewers and transportation, but around 5 sweeping outcomes, which of course are things like sustainability, equity, livability, prosperity, and so on. And these highly subjective terms, of course, mean whatever the council wants them to mean. In July, the council released its housing and transportation plans, which are scheduled for adoption in November and December. And these plans emphasize what Forbes.com columnist Joel Kotkin meant when he said of today's trendy smart growth planners, quote, "The people designing your city don't care what you want." Now, the Thrive Housing Plan has two major components. Of course, they are densification and socioeconomic integration of the kind that Cornelia spoke about. The council is going to require, in terms of densification, that some fully developed suburbs increase their density by up to 30%, some a bit over that, by infill, redevelopment, changes in zoning. It requires municipalities to build, quote, sustainable housing, of course, which is, of course, designed to break us of our, quote, auto dependence, so that the new norm becomes walking, biking, and taking transit. And I'll quote here just briefly, the plan calls for housing development, quote, patterns that support high transit demand to improve residents' ability to live without a personal vehicle. They are trying to remake our entire 7-county metro area very spread out around transit. And in the process of densification, Thrive is going to turn back the clock, remaking our Twin Cities region along the lines that our great-grandparents would have recognized. It seeks, and I quote, "a return of the tighter live, work, shop neighborhoods that dominated during the streetcar era of the early 20th century." And guess who said these words? Arthur Nelson, now of the University of Arizona, and Wendell spoke about him today. He's the go-to guy if you want a plan, as planners do, saying that all the millennials and all the people in the silver tsunami will be returning to the core cities. He's the guy, and he did, in fact, write this plan, or this particular study. Now, the housing plan's second component, as I said, is socioeconomic integration, and it aims to ensure that all 186 municipalities have a government-approved mix of people of the right race, ethnicity, and income, despite the fact that racial and ethnic minorities have been flooding into our suburbs for the last 15 years. And in 2013, no surprise, the council analyzed every census tract in our entire 7-county area by income, race, and ethnicity. The purpose was to identify racially concentrated areas of poverty and high opportunity clusters, which of course means essentially areas with good schools and low crime. So now the council is telling us it intends to use these data to disperse people across the region in the approved government demographic mix. And since the council lacks the statutory authority to do this on its own, surprise, it has come up with a scheme to compel municipalities to take the necessary steps themselves. And what they're going to do is use their authority over non-housing related benefits, such as money for important road projects. They're going to tie those kinds of rewards to how well your housing plan distributes and disperses regional poverty. Now, Thrive's transportation plan is 500 pages long, and I should mention that this housing plan I just described is 106 pages long, dense bureaucraties, all of these plans. Neither one includes a summary. So you have to read every single word to know what is in these plans. But in one sentence, I can summarize what the transportation plan does. It essentially ignores roads in every respect and lavishes money on light rail. And here's how the council justifies this. It says, quote, "Expanding the roadway system is not a sustainable way to address congestion, climate change, equity, and livability." And that's despite the fact that even the council acknowledges that 73% of the region's population growth by 2040 is expected to be in the suburbs. And this, of course, with their drive for densification in the developed suburbs, is going to put many, many more cars on the road. But they absolutely refuse to take account of and to provide funding to meet this increasing demand. So how is our center working to counter the Thrive plan? Well, I wish I could say that we have a group of people such as those in your organization, the folks who were standing in the red, white, and blue in Florida. We do not have any of those people. I was really inspired by Mimi Steele last year when I heard about what you were doing. This is what we have to do. So I went back and I tried to interest the Tea Party people in combating this. And I just couldn't get these folks to bite. You know, they're busy with other things. And I think the problem in part is this is being rolled out carefully and slowly so that it's not real yet. Even though we know now what they're going to do with housing and transportation, none of the numbers that pertain to any city have been issued. They will not be issued for another year. So the plan will be adopted in October and November, but it's be another year before anybody knows how it affects their neighborhood. And I think that is really key. So what that means is the business community is basically on board with this plan, the Chamber of Commerce, you know, basically on board with it. Of course, all the foundations are helping to fund it. Many mayors and city councils are very concerned, but they are fearful of retaliation. So who does that leave? That leaves us. At Center of the American Experiment, we are a very small state-based think tank. So hopefully what I have to say here will be helpful to those who don't have ground troops, but who are simply trying to provide the intellectual ammunition in the battle of ideas. That's how we see our role. So we've taken a three-pronged approach to fighting this plan. The first is to raise public awareness, to sound the alarm about what's going on to the extent we can. The second is to work with decision makers, work with influential legislators, public elected officials, media people, if we can, to educate them on these issues and then to try to get them to work together to speak out and to combat this plan. The third thing is that we are looking at all the past criticisms of our Met Council, and there have been many, including by our legislative auditor, who 3 years ago in a fantastic report with a summary said that this is an unaccountable and unelected group that has a credibility gap and an accountability gap with the public and with elected officials. But you know, nothing has happened despite this denouncement. So we're trying to pull together these kinds of criticisms and work with insiders to propose reforms, politically pragmatic reforms, trying to rein in this council, trying to restrict its authority statutorily. So that's what we've tried to do as a very small group. Now, the first thing that we did in terms of our communication strategy was that I, as a columnist, was able to write a number of articles exposing this in the Star Tribune. We have blog posts that we have posted. We've spoken to lots of groups. We've been on talk radio. I've debated commissioners in the Met Council. I've testified at Met Council hearings. And we found it helpful to try to reduce into one page our primary concerns, and that is a tremendous challenge given the complexity of all of this. But I like the point of, I think of Georgie today about trying to grab the narrative and piggyback on those kinds of words. I found with transitory development that even when I explained it, some of the people in our office said, huh, you know, what is that? So one of our people came up with this. She said, ask this question: does everyone have to live in a 1,500-foot condo above a coffee shop on a transit line? In a sentence, I thought that captured pretty well what this means for how our lives will change. Now, an essential part of this communication strategy for us was to find well-educated, informed insiders, because I'm totally new to this. I usually write on culture and education, and you know, this, I don't know anything about these arcane funding mechanisms for transit, but we have found a small group of people, including a recently retired chief environmental engineer for the Minnesota Department of Transportation, a couple former very highly placed officials from the Met Council who are helping us. So there are fact checkers. They're the people who give us the 20,000-foot view from that local level, and they've been indispensable to us. Now, the second prong of our communication strategy has been to bring national firepower, national experts into the debate, which has been entirely controlled by the other side. And that's where the ADC has been truly invaluable, because we have brought in Randall and Wendell Cox a number of times to speak in the most highly leveraged ways that we could concoct, and they have really made a difference. So the plan was released, the first overarching plan, in February. In March, Randall did a paper for us, a trenchant 12-page analysis. Nobody in the state could have written this. It takes a national expert, and it was called The 10 Flaws of the Thrive Plan. Faulty assumptions are leading to an unsustainable long-term plan for the Twin Cities region. And then in April, Wendell came for us. He presented at a forum where we had standing room only crowd. We had 8 people from the Met Council and their staff. And I love the title of his lecture. It was The Thrive Plan. Is it undemocratic, grandiose, and ultimately destructive? And in terms of leveraging his appearance, his 24 hours, he had dinner the night he arrived with a gubernatorial candidate, did an editorial meeting with the Pioneer Press in St. Paul, a debate on Minnesota Public Radio, drive time talk radio. He met with key legislators, did a roundtable, the first of its kind in our state, that brought together people from all walks of life to talk about this. And of course, he brought his fantastic international perspective to this. And finally, he did a strategy session with the activists we did have in our group. And the housing and transportation plans were released in July, and in August, Randall came. He spoke to a Tea Party gathering and a number of rallies. He met with legislators. He had dinner with county commissioners, who are our real hope in actually having a united front of elected officials publicly denounce what's going on. He debated our Minnesota Commissioner of Transportation, and in August, he came back again. He spoke to people who had never heard about this plan, our commercial realtors. That was fantastic. And in September, Randall's coming back to debate one of the arch villains in this whole thing. So very quickly, and I am almost finished, the second prong of our campaign has been to encourage timid local and elected officials, county people, legislators, to come together to publicly denounce the plan. And we do have some good news here, I think. For the first time, a consortium of county commissioners has come together to pressure the Met Council to denounce its plan and to pressure it to change course. And they will be doing a public event soon. And we have provided some intellectual ammunition for them, and we're very pleased to have had that effect. City officials at last are beginning to speak up. So we have a couple newspaper articles we can circulate now to try to inspire others. And finally, the third prong of our campaign is this blueprint for reform that I mentioned. We're going to be calling on Governor Dayton on October 7th to issue an executive order confining the council to its core mission, calling for restructuring in the way that these members are chosen, completely unelected. There are people like Public Affairs Director of AFSCME, Teamsters, union folks, these sorts of folks. We want to see that change. And in our battle against the Met Council, of course, we are absolutely the David against the Goliath, but in our darkest moments, it's encouraging to remember that in the end, it was David who won. Thank you.